Well, thank you very much. Well, joining us now to preview President Biden's joint address to Congress and Senator Tim Scott's Republican response is Republican Congressman from Kentucky, James Comer. Congressman, thank you for joining us. What are you looking for tonight?
Well, I'm looking for a sincere speech about unity. If the president had done his homework already, he would say, I've already met with a bipartisan group of lawmakers in Congress, and this is what we're going to do. We're going to pass this infrastructure bill that's going to be true infrastructure. He would also say that he's already met with a group of bipartisan lawmakers, and we're going to do this with respect to community college. But he hasn't, because the first 100 days have been all about passing a partisan liberal agenda. So I'm anxious to hear what he says, but I'm going to take it probably, unfortunately, with a grain of salt.
Yeah, a partisan agenda at a high cost. The $1.9 trillion COVID relief plan, $2.3 trillion for infrastructure, and then tonight talking about $1.8 trillion for this American Families Plan. I know that you sent out this 100 days, 100 failures, a list of what you think that President Biden has not accomplished in his first 100 days. Give us a highlight, some of the things that you pointed out.
Well, the highlight, he's cost Americans jobs. When you look at canceling the Keystone Pipeline and the result of that, not just the loss of good paying union jobs, but also a spike in energy prices. He spent money like a drunken soldier, and as a result, we're seeing signs of pretty significant inflation in America. When you continue to print money in Washington, it's going to have a negative impact on the consumers. We're already seeing higher prices at the grocery store, higher prices at the building supply store, higher prices at the gas pump. And unfortunately, with what he's proposing tonight, we're going to see more inflation. So we also look at the failures with respect to border security. In his first two acts as president, he tied the hands of our border agents in being able to apprehend illegals crossing the border, and he halted construction of the border wall. So 100 failures in 100 days was honestly being generous to Joe Biden.
Congressman, do you think there's a deal to be had when it comes to infrastructure? And if so, who would vote for it?
I honestly believe a majority of Republicans would support infrastructure if it was true infrastructure. When we're talking about infrastructure, every American knows we're talking about roads, bridges, we're talking about inland waterways, we're talking about rural broadband. Many of us think the border wall is infrastructure. But when you listen to Joe Biden and Ocasio-Cortez and the liberal wing of the Democrat Party talk about infrastructure, they're talking about child care, they're talking about social justice programs, things that have absolutely nothing to do with infrastructure. Then they talk about the Green New Deal. And all of this adds significant cost to the bottom line of the project. It adds unnecessary bureaucracy and unattainable regulations to the project. And this is not what we need. We need to invest in infrastructure in America, but we need to do it wisely and in a manner that is beneficial to the taxpayers. And that's not what I've heard thus far from Joe Biden.
But he doesn't really need bipartisanship to get things passed. He's already shown that through reconciliation.
That's right. And it's really unfortunate because he gave a great inauguration speech where he talked about unity and working across party lines, but we haven't seen the first hint of that. As far as I can tell, only a very small number of senators invited themselves to the Oval Office, and he shot down their infrastructure proposal. So he has not met with Kevin McCarthy, as you mentioned earlier. He hasn't met with rank and file members of the House or the Senate. And it's very unfortunate because he's been president 100 days. He served his whole career in the United States Senate, so he understands the legislative process. But it's just like immediately upon taking office, he surrenders to the liberal wing of the Democrat Party and is trying to be a progressive and pass the most liberal socialist agenda that we've ever seen in the history of America. And it's very unfortunate. I hope that he can reflect on his past 100 days and come to his senses and try to govern as a moderate, which is how he campaigned as president.
Congressman, give us a snapshot of what's going on in Kentucky right now, whether it's the economy or response to COVID. Tell us how the state is doing, the bluegrass state.
I think Kentucky's like most states. We're experiencing a labor shortage, and that's where the disconnect is in Washington, D.C. right now. Joe Biden will probably talk about it tonight, how millions of Americans are trying to find work. I represent one of the poorest districts in America represented by a Republican. And I can tell you, every big employer in every end of my district is struggling to find workers. There is a labor shortage in America, partly because of Democrat policies that incentivize people not to work with the extended unemployment benefits. And we've got a scenario in America where manufacturers aren't at full capacity and a lot of businesses aren't able to operate at a profit now because of a labor shortage. But when you've got Democrats in Washington and a president that continue to believe that we need to offer more welfare and incentivize people to not work, then we're going to continue to face challenges. And that's what's happening in Kentucky. And I think Kentucky's like most states.
All right, Congressman James Comer, thank you for joining us, sir.
Thanks for having me on.
Thanks.
Folks, please.